we are all on the same road. We just may be on a different rest stop on the road. But it's this amazing journey that we're on. And I also would just want to say, I love the accolades that Sean gave me, but let me make it clear, the Gillioz hasn't arrived. I would never want anyone in my community to ever see or hear anything from that. I'm excited about where we are. I'm excited about where we're going, but we're not nearly there yet. We're not nearly there yet. And so let me just give you a little deep dive into the Gillioz, and then let me give you some data that I think hopefully will inspire you, and I think you'll also see a theme here that is a little humbling to me to see. But this is the historic Gillioz Theater. It actually opened in 1926. Route 66 was actually named in Springfield, Missouri. A number of different highway numbers were suggested from different communities, but the number 66 came out of Springfield. And so Springfield has hung a hook on that and said we're the birthplace of Route 66. Now it starts, in Chicago and moves all its way through, and everybody can sing the Sleep at the Wheel song if they like. Too many words for me. But Route 66 is central to the Gillioz identity. It literally, there's a Western Union office just to the right on that picture, and that's where the telegram came that said Route 66 is what it's going to be. And it's really central to us. I also would notice how narrow that building is where the marquee is. It's less than 20 feet wide. That'll matter. When you think about Route 66, though, it's basically 20th century Western expansion. It was the opportunity to get in your vehicle and go where you wanted, when you wanted, stop when you wanted, for as long as you wanted. You weren't suspect by a train schedule or even a wagon train. Hard to believe we're talking about that far back, but that was the reality of it. It captured the imagination. So travelers could control their schedule, and we were a transition house. Route 66 also hit at the exact moment technology gave us silent film. And so there was this mindset, and Gillioz, by the way, is the name of the man that built our facility. And I akin him to P.T. Barnum. I really do. I think he was an early showman. And what he saw, and what others like him saw, was there was an opportunity to entertain people with this new medium. And there were also some other aspects of Route 66 that come into play on that. But we were a transition house, so we were part vaudeville and part silent film. And it did create this entrepreneurial entertainment spirit. And here's the reality. If you took a map of Route 66 and you put a pin light in every place that there was a theater built between 1926 and 1935, you've got a string of Christmas tree lights. So it wasn't uncommon at all. The Gillioz wasn't uncommon in that capacity. Ultimately, we opened in October of 1926, so we just literally celebrated our 95th anniversary a few weeks ago. That's what it looked like opening weekend on the street there on the square. And going to a theater in those days was akin to going to the Met in New York. You dressed in your best. And that certainly was the best that Springfield, which was still strongly a rural community. They sure don't look like farmers in this picture. And then downtown declined. Does this ring any bells? Any bells?
No.
That's right. Thank you. We transitioned from vaudeville and silent film to talkies in the 30s, and everything was fine. We basically went to straight films until the 70s. And then something came to Springfield, Missouri, and it was called the Mall. The Mall came that had a multiplex theater associated with it. And so downtowns across America, Springfield wasn't unique in this. Downtowns across America saw Main Street USA dry up, and suburban sprawl took its place. And along with that came these transitions from these extravagant movie palaces to going to a tin shed with carpet on the walls, or curtains on the walls. That's what the multiplex was. Certainly exceptional sound, but the room doesn't play any part of the conversation or the experience in those multiplexes. Ultimately, the Gillioz shuttered in 1980, and that's what the marquee looked like whenever it closed. And that's what the theater became over the next 26 years. You could stand on the stage of the Gillioz and you would know whether it was raining or not because you'd be getting wet. The roof was open air. You could see the stars. You could snow. If you wanted to know whether it was snowing, people in the office would say, go to the stage. If you come back wet, we'll know what's going on outside. I also would note, I love hearing some of these stories about some long-term warriors that have been here because one of my first meetings, one of my long-standing board members who has since retired, Dave Rawling, he's a hero of mine. He talked about, this is terrazzo floor on the wall on this first picture to the left. And he said, "My first day on the board, I spent 3 hours shoveling pigeon feces with a snow shovel." And this was a point of pride for him for some reason. And I was like, "You are a strange human being. This is what you want to introduce yourself to me as." But as I look back, it really was the beginning of finding this passion that makes people do really kind of ridiculous things for something that's bigger than themselves. So, again, does this sound familiar? We started reclaiming history. A 501c3 nonprofit was established. The Gillioz was placed on the U.S. Registry of Historic Places. Ultimately, it took us 20 years and $12 million to preserve and restore the theater and the complex, and it was a long 20 years. It was a long, long 20 years. And they did an amazing job, and they recreated that picture for the opening weekend, and those are the people that were really responsible for it. Some of those people are still on my board to this day and are amazing, amazing titans to me. And so it's really great fun. Then there was this modern era that happened. We reopened in 2006, and the Gillioz was the precursor that Sean referenced to downtown revitalization. And honestly, timing was everything, and we were early. We were early adopters. And so what ended up happening was the theater actually went bankrupt in 2008. So he references buying a sports car and not buying gas. The analogy that I use is the dog was chasing the car, the dog caught the car, had no clue what to do with the car. They were focused entirely on preserving that space because it was in jeopardy. And they did a marvelous job preserving that space. But they had no clue how to operate that space once they got it. And so it went down in 2008, and again, local citizens rallied. And then in October 2014, some of them this afternoon heard me, and I always tell the story. When the board called me, the board president called me and said, "Hello, Geoff, we need an old guy." That's the opening line. And I said, "Man, I'm going to call my therapist, and I'm going to call you back, and I'll let you know." And my wife and I agreed. My wife's my associate director, the most amazing human being I've ever met in my life. And she works with me every day, and it's an incredible gift. She's brilliant, and she's running things there for me right now. And so she's with me, and we came in. We did a few things, and I won't go into them at this point for time, but we made some changes. Like so many times, I would love to take credit for all the changes that happened in 2014, but I was on second base. You know, I didn't really ever even have to swing. I was on second base. They had set me up with some beautiful things. And by the way, that's exactly where the Jayhawk theater is. There's some beautiful pieces set on the page right now. That's the most recent portrait of the theater. That was October of 2015, and that is a picture. It's actually a composite exposure from an 8-time Kodak master named Jim Lurch, who shot 134 frames and moved a light every third seat so that he could evenly light it and then combine it in Photoshop. But that's what she looks like today, and she is very, very special to us and our community and what happens with it. So our mission at the theater, we have a threefold mission. We're here to preserve the past, we're here to celebrate community, and we're here to make memories. Those are the three things. Now, those are three great things, and we'll go through them. But I want to share with you a more important question. Why? And why would we spend the time here tonight to talk about this? Why are you out here? And now I want to move into giving you some data. And I'm going to move fairly quickly because it's kind of boring to people that aren't me. But I think it's exceptional data. And here's one of the things I want you to know. Reasons why the historic Jayhawk Theater should be a vital part of your downtown strategy. Let me give you some reasons. This is data from Americans for the Arts. You can go there free anytime you want. They're out of Washington, D.C. It's remarkable. Educational benefits. Arts improve academic performance. Theaters and exposure to the arts produce higher GPAs and lower dropout rates. No one can argue it. And it moves all the way across socioeconomic barriers. It doesn't matter what race you are, what gender you are. This moves across it. Arts spark creativity and innovation. It's a top 5 skill sought by business leaders today. When you're allowing people to be exposed to the arts, you're creating a creative that will use that the rest of their lives. If you're a scientist, You're 17 times more likely to win a Nobel Prize if you're an arts enthusiast. These are factual numbers. They poll Nobel laureates, and they find out that people that are exposed to the arts, in science, by the way, incredibly important whenever we recognize these pieces. There are health benefits. Arts improve individual well-being. 81% of the population says the arts are a positive experience in a troubled world. I don't know whether you've noticed, but the headlines aren't terribly exciting right now. Arts strengthen mental health. They reduce depression and anxiety, and arts improve health care. Arts attendees, this is an amazing number. Arts attendees spend $31.47 per person per event beyond the cost of admission in your community on things like meal, lodging, retail, parking. These are real dollars that add up, that I don't get a piece of that at the Gillioz. That's the money that goes to the pub next door to me, and the hotel 2 blocks down, and the parking lot that's all around me. That's all there. I'm giving that to them. The joke with the local pub that I say to them, that are my neighbors, I say the only reason there are 1,000 people downtown on Tuesday night in Springfield, Missouri is because I turned my marquee on. And that's the facts. And what happens is they have to come into our office and say, how do we need to staff this week? How many people do I need at the bar tonight? What time's the show going to get out? Because I'm going to need to leave the kitchen open. Because they all thrive off of what comes off of the theater. Here's some great numbers. The locals are important, but the number on the right is the number that the average tourist that comes into the theater spends in the community outside of that. So the local may spend $23 locally, but the guy that comes from the out of the county is spending $47 in your community. And by the way, 69% of those attendees said that the arts project was the primary reason they came here in the first place. So this money is incredibly important for downtown economy. This is the best community investment I can talk about, all right? It literally raises the whole ship. Whenever you put a theater in here, you literally create business that moves all around. Let me give you real numbers from the Gillioz. These are real numbers that I discovered off of data mining in 2019. 2019 alone, that 1 year, I saw visitors from 39 states and 4 foreign countries buy tickets in my theater. 1,071 different zip codes came to Springfield and spent money in my theater on shows. It represented additional money for my neighboring businesses that, according to these statistics that Americans for the Arts figures off of my data, over $42 million went into downtown Springfield as a result of the Gillioz doing the shows that it did. That's not the money that I got. I didn't get that money. That's the money all my neighbors got. And that's the tax revenue that came into the community. It's an incredible piece. When you invest in a theater and in an arts organization, you're literally making an investment that will yield educational benefits, it's going to yield health benefits, it's going to yield social benefits, but it's going to yield economic benefits. Now here's something a lot of elected officials don't see, and they don't know. And I can tell you this first person because during COVID I ended up having to spend a good deal of time advocating to state senators and to federal senators, trying to help get assistance because my business was shut down completely. There was no partial openings, there was no limited capacities. I'm a touring house. Elvis Costello, Dave Chappelle, John Mulaney, Vince Gill. These are the people who come to my stage. And they aren't getting on buses during COVID. So in 2020, the Gillioz experienced a 91% drop in revenue in 1 year. 91%. And here's something that they don't talk about. It didn't stop on New Year's, December 2020. I didn't get a touring show back in until I did a Brian Regan comedy show the 3rd week of July. So I had another 7 months of bleeding. But not only did I, but all of my neighbors bled as well, for months and months and months. So whenever I called our state senator, and I'm willing to say his name, Roy Blunt's office.
Yeah.
The conservative. Don't figure he's gonna be the first guy to sign an arts help. And I called his office and we had multiple conversations. And at one point, one of the staffers said, I have to be honest with you, I don't understand at all how your industry works. And here's what my response was. I said, you know why? Because I've never asked you for anything. Because I am the American dream. If I don't sell tickets, the tour goes home. You don't keep touring if you're not selling tickets. You just stop. You don't reduce the price. There's no loss leader. It doesn't happen that way. It's the purest form of capitalism, supply and demand. That's what we supply. Here's an interesting fact, and I love this, and this is what I told him. The airline industry received $63 billion in stimulus support. $63 billion. And the airline industry employs 319,396 people. 319,000 people moved $63 billion. The arts industry, in that same period, employs 1,655,393 people. And where they got $63 billion, we got $75 million. So 4 times as many people got less than 1% of the funding. That's a disparity. And I don't believe any of this is malice. I believe it's literally because they don't understand what these theaters mean to these respective communities. And that's why it's critical that people like you come out tonight and learn these things so that you can have informed, educated conversations about the way to make Topeka better.